Hello, and welcome to the first installment of GameCola's recaps of E3 2019. This is the EA recap and also the first installment, so let's get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. I'm Joseph Martin, if I didn't say that. So we'll be doing a separate episode of this for each presentation. This one just features me, but future ones will feature input from other GameCola staff members as we go throughout the E3 celebration times. We'll be ranking each presentation against each other in a big old list. There's only one right now, so it won't be as much of a ranking in this episode, but you'll see as we go on. It'll make sense. So let's talk about EA. EA had this big 2.5 hour presentation. I would say that starting out, the opening was okay. The energy was fine. It was a little jokey, but it wasn't like too bad about it. The host seemed to have good charisma. It then just sort of generally devolved as things got a lot more improvisational. It was very conversational, a lot of interviews rather than people getting up on a stage and telling the audience. It was hosts talking to the developers and asking questions in a sort of interview setting. There's also a lot of shouting, like a lot of just shouting and peeking the microphone. It was a little much for me. There's also a lot of interrupting of people. Just in general, like they were trying to be improvisational, and I think they were relying at just too much. And so a lot of the conversation I feel like was stifled. So all in all, I don't think they got a lot out of the presentational, the conversational style instead of the presentational style. It wasn't necessarily that bad, but I don't think they got really anything out of it. So why they did it didn't really seem to help them out that much. So let's start talking about the games. So for Star Wars, the Jedi Fallen Order, it's the single player game. They had 15 minutes of gameplay. They were very insistent on that. It looked pretty neat. Again, like, you know, with EA is coming off of a lot of controversy surrounding Anthem and Star Wars Battlefront. They're coming off of a lot of animosity there. So starting with their best foot forward, I think is a very good idea. So, and this was probably the best part of the presentation, honestly. It's a single player Star Wars game. There, it features stuff like Force. You can do a Force stuff. You can do chaos control and freeze something, which like was kind of cool, but also like it was also you could just stop the platforming challenges. Like most of the time with the Force stop, you're just like, here's a big spinning thing. Stop. And now I can walk through it or across it. It didn't seem very interesting. But the combat seemed alright. You have skill points. They didn't really go into it. But, and it might be an Xbox exclusive. Again, they didn't really go into it. There was a logo at the end, so maybe it's just like premiering on Xbox. I'm not sure. But it definitely seemed like the most interesting part of the presentation. Again, it's EA. They could mess it up, but with a single player experience, it might be harder. And just speaking from the stance of the presentation, it looked decent and like there was definitely room for it to be a cool video game. Next, there was Apex Legends. This was not as good. A lot of updatey stuff talking about like the end of season 1 and all the stuff they're going to put in season 2. There was a lot of focus on the new character that they were bringing in. She seemed interesting. It gave me a very Overwatchy vibe that I haven't gotten from watching other Apex Legends related stuff. Maybe if you're like in the community more, this sort of like the lore behind the characters and like the special abilities of the characters is more put on the forefront. But from its like advertising stuff and what I have seen of the game, not being a player of it, this seemed like a much heavier push for like lore and character focus. They also had new guns and they had like map stuff, and it was kind of just like details. They didn't really go into it a lot. The gun was just like, this is a cool gun that you can use. But all that season 2 stuff is coming out on July 2nd, apparently. Mostly cosmetic stuff. Again, not a whole lot of interesting stuff aside from, you know, the lore stuff they did with the character. Battlefield 5, again, mostly like they talked about a lot of new maps, like a Greece map. I mean, it seemed like okay. It wasn't really like mind-blowing. It's like, yeah, it's a cool map. Like lots of minor updates, like, oh, instead of 50 ranks, there's 500 ranks, and you can do private servers now where you can set up your own thing. And like, we're going to be adding in Japan again, the Pacific World Stage or whatever they called it. There's an actual history term for it. But they're adding that, which is stuff that they've done previous Battlefield, but they're like, but it's cool and new now. And like, and none of these things are bad, but it wasn't particularly interesting, especially, I mean, again, I'm not someone who's played Battlefield 5, but playing games similar to that, it's like, yeah, a couple new maps. and like a couple of updates. But like this is stuff that I would see in like, you know, just a general developer update. This is like E3 big presentation. We get back more into that once we get into the sports games. We've got FIFA, which I will be referring to as football. And then when we get to Madden, I will also refer to that as football, but we'll transition, all right? Just so that we're all on the same page here. So EA FIFA, start out, there's just a bunch of people doing soccer tricks in the background. I thought that was just kind of funny. Like, just the weird things that E3 presentations spend money on. It's just like, here's, you know, you're going to be playing with soccer balls. Or footballs, I went back on my whole thing. You're gonna be playing with that in the background while this guy talks. It's like, all right, cool. I think I'm glad they got paid for their good skills. There was a big focus on it being like street football, like there were walls, like, and it was funny because all I could think about was Mario Strikers, where you know the ball can't go, you can't kick the football out of bounds, it just bounces off the wall. Oh gosh, the line that got me, I had to replay it to make sure that I had understood it correctly, where they said that in this game, when you're creating a character, you'll be able to make female players, and they said that it was one of the biggest innovations.
What I really want to know is, can you create female players?
Absolutely, I think that's one of the biggest innovations.
That is a crazy thing to say. Like, I don't know how you would put it in. It's kind of weird that I didn't know that you just didn't have women in your football video game. So like this, it's weird. I don't know how you would do it in a way that wasn't weird, but saying it was one of the biggest innovations, and this wasn't like in an interview part. This was like in an official trailer. So it wasn't like something someone said off the cuff, which like I would excuse maybe a little bit more if you're just trying to find the words. But no, this was in the trailer that they edited, and they were like, yes, this is a good thing for this person to say. This doesn't present a very weird dynamic. Anyway, after that, it was mostly just buzzwords. I have the phrase football intelligence
as football intelligence
written in my notes. I don't even know what that means. It was a lot of like mechanics that they kind of talked about, but they didn't really elaborate. They're like, oh, the ball physics are better. They're going to bounce off of people better. And it's like, this is going to be better. And maybe E3 isn't the place where you can really get into that. And they said that there was some other additional video stuff, but it was just a lot of like football intelligence. But they gave the September 27th release date. Then they had the guy from The Daily Show, Trevor, just kind of come on and talk about how he liked FIFA. That was weird. I'm not sure why they did that. That's another sort of weird E3 thing where they're just like, we're going to get a celebrity to come and talk about video games. And it's like, I mean, cool. It's not really what I'm here to see, though. I'm sure for other people it might be validating. I don't know. We had a brief, but before getting to Madden, we had a brief aside about Anthem, where they're just like, hey, we exist, we're listening to fans to improve the game. That's about it. I'm not telling you how we're improving the game. I mean, they may have mentioned some stuff, but it was all pretty vague. Like, they talked about their testing stuff with players. So, like, it definitely felt like just like a tip of the hat of like, yeah, we know Anthem's bad, but we're gonna make it better. Not gonna tell you how, though. Then we get into Madden. There was a guy, they had this in the FIFA too, where they just had like soccer players come on and talk about soccer, and then I'm an American. I tried. I'm sorry. Soccer and football. So they just had this guy, like I have in my notes, hi, I'm John Footballman, and I approve of this football game. Like, again, I'm sure he's a cool dude. He was a really good wide receiver or something like that. There were two football people who came on and talked about how much they liked football and also how much they liked this video game. I forget which was which position. And it was just kind of like, I mean, I assume you like football. It's your career. I don't know. It felt weird. But again, people are into it. It's cool to get the celebrities in there. Like, again, at least with the sports celebrities, there's like a more direct, like, this is why it would be cool to talk about it. They talked about special abilities that the football players had. That seems like it could be interesting. Like, you have to get into the zone to activate it. I don't know. To me, if I were to play a football game, that would feel a little gamey. Like, obviously it's a game, but like a little bit like there's these weird extra gamey things on top of like just general like how you would actually play and strategize in football. But maybe you can turn them off, or it was just different things. Again, a lot of it was like based on football strategy that I don't really understand. Again, it was not a whole lot of details on like why it was good. They talked about these special abilities and they talk about general like it's going to be better. They didn't really go into detail. Last thing they talked about was Sims 4 having an island living expansion, which is you live on an island. There's beach stuff. You can be friends with dolphins. You can clean up the beach. There's mermaids. That's all cool. I talked to Anna, GameCola Sims expert Anna Bernarski, who her exact words are, "Islands are cool, I guess. I want a university pack, please, Sims 4. Please just give it." So I don't know if maybe this wasn't the most anticipated thing. I think mermaids were something that people were into in general, though, from other Sims games, from what I recall. So that's probably cool. They also did this, they had this guy come in and like they were talking about like all the different LGBT stuff that they were adding. Like I didn't quite get the details because like it was just here's the thing, like that's good, like I want to be clear about that. My confusion comes from they just had this guy who I assume is like a Sims Let's Player-esque person who is part of the LGBT community, I would imagine, because they had him do this, but they just had him like at his computer, like in his Let's Play setup, just talking to his computer about this. There were no graphics that I can remember. Maybe they just went by quickly. It was a pretty short segment, and it was just like a strange thing. And it's like the women are innovation thing. It's like you could have added this earlier, and it kind of felt like you just waited until Pride Month of June to do it, so you would get like bonus points. Again, it's good that they're adding it, but I don't see why they needed to wait until now to do it. It seems like they could have figured that out earlier. Whatever they did, again, it was a weird segment for a good thing, and I don't know why they did it the way they did it. I feel like they could have done that better. So that's basically the presentation. The general consensus, not just of me, I looking around, was that people thought that Star Wars was pretty cool. A lot of the other games just seem to be focused on details. And again, like we're only talking about 3 games, 2 of which were FIFA and Madden, which like people are excited about, but also like there's not really a whole lot that was revealed in them. I think people who are excited about those games are going to be just as excited as they always are. Maybe the Madden special ability stuff is the only thing that really stood out to me, having watched these FIFA and Madden presentations before. Again, just, not a whole lot. It wasn't really bad as much as not super interesting aside from Star Wars. So obviously there's nothing to rank this against, but I would say that going forward as we're going through the other presentations, I think the only thing that EA is going to rank above is any presentation that's actively bad. Because again, it wasn't really bad. It was kind of underwhelming. Not a whole lot of interesting stuff. Lots of minor details. The conversational style didn't really elevate the presentation at all. There was a lot of shouting. A pretty neutral sort of thing. So anything worse than EA is going to be like an explicitly bad presentation, and pretty much anything that could be considered good will probably be ranked above it. Be sure as E3 goes on to keep checking back wherever you listened to this. I don't know where I'm posting it yet. Probably on YouTube, maybe on the podcast feed. Come and listen. Be sure to come and listen to our other episodes as they go up, as E3 continues through Tuesday. I'm going to try to get these out like the day after the presentation. We'll see how that goes. There may be a bit of a delay. But thanks for listening. Let us, if there was anything that I didn't cover that you want us to mention maybe in future things, or just any comments you had about the presentation. What did you think? Leave them in the comments if you're in a place that can do it. Or tweet at us, GameCola, Twitter or Facebook. You can find us. Just search GameCola. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you for the next presentation.